What's good YouTube, your boy Proxy there. Let's talk about things that are generally punishable in MK1. Note, I'll lightly touch on some of these concepts and explain them further in their own specific videos. First and foremost, you need to understand frame data when trying to grasp punishing. Let's talk a bit about the specific frame data that you need to know and understand. First, we have startup frames. This refers to the frames that a string, button, special, etc. takes to start up. Generally, every fighter's fastest button has a 7-frame startup, unless you're Liu Kang and Kung Lao with 6-frame buttons. Next, we have frames on block. This refers to the frames of a move on block. It can be either plus, 0, or negative. Last, we have recovery frames. This refers to how much frames a string, button, etc. takes before allowing a fighter to be able to do an action again. We'll focus on these 3 parts of frame data for the video. Now that we've discussed the relevant frame data, let's talk about what's generally punishable in MK1. Strings, specials, throws, jump-ins, etc. are all punishable. First and foremost, a punishing button must be less frames than the negative frames of the move on block to be able to punish it. Here's Johnny's string at negative 12 frames. This is punishable on block because I possess buttons with startups quicker than its recovery on block. I can use any button to punish this once they're less than 12 frames. Note, when punishing an opponent, you'll see punish on the side of your screen. Understand that these frames cannot be equivalent. So let me show you an example. Raiden's back 2 is negative 7 frames. Now I'll try to use Raiden's 7-frame button to punish it, but it cannot because Raiden can block before the button hits. Even though it cannot punish it, I'll explain in another video why you should know which buttons or strings or specials are negative 7 frames. This specific frame is very important. Majorly for the main cast, the consensus fastest button is 7 frames. This means that negative 7 is the frame threshold at which strings, buttons, etc. become generally safe. However, there are 3 characters that bypass this. Namely Kung Lao, Liu Kang because they have 6-frame standing buttons. Here's Liu Kang punishing that same negative 7-frame overhead with a 6-frame standing one. Note however, reversals bypass the button frame rule. Once a reversal is equal to or less than the negative frames of the block, string, button, etc., it can punish it. For example, here's Lime using a 7-frame startup enhanced CZ Lion to punish Raiden's back 2. Let's look at another example. This specific Johnny string is negative 8. Raiden's Shocker has an 8-frame startup. This means that he can punish it on reversal. But this isn't always the case. As I always say, frame data without context is meaningless and can often be misleading. This move is negative 7 frames on block. Liu Kang's standing 1 is 6 frames, therefore it should be able to punish it, right? Wrong. The pushback from this string makes it so that it cannot be punished by Liu Kang. Now, if I manually alter the distance and bring Liu Kang unrealistically closer, he can now punish the button. This is a much needed context that you need to understand when discussing punishing in MK1. Let's move into flawless blocking, gaps, and overheads. A perfect example to showcase this is Scorpion's standing 1-2-2 string. This string is negative 3 on block, but it is very unsafe. First, on flawless block, its frames are altered to negative 13, making it punishable. Secondly, the last hit can be upblocked, leaving Scorpion at negative 38 frames, allowing you to punish him. The ender of this string affording you an upblock means that there exists a gap here, and one large enough affording you to upblock the overhead. The last hit also has a gap that you can hammer through. Hammering allows you to tank the hit of the button, string, etc., allowing you to punish it. This results in a damage trade which you'll normally win. For this specific gap, I took 70 damage while Scorpion took 110. It also knocks them down, granting you the advantage. Now, some gaps are large enough whereby they grant you more frames to punish it. These are called interruptible gaps. These gaps can be interrupted by quick buttons or reversals affording you a more significant punish. For example, Lime's back 3-4 has an interruptible gap. I can down 1 her, I can stand in 1 her, or I can stand in 2 her. These are 7, 7, and 8 frames respectively. I can also use an 8-frame reversal to punish this gap, such as Raiden's Shocker. Also, note, even though a string may end in a property type, namely an overhead or high, it doesn't mean that they can be punished. For example, Lime's forward 4-4 ends in an overhead, but unlike Scorpion's 1-2-2 overhead, it cannot be upblocked. I also cannot interrupt it. It can however be hammered through. The gap just isn't large enough to afford you an upblock or interrupt. Context matters. Next are specials. These moves are generally significantly negative, allowing you to punish them with your best starters. Like I always tell y'all, some strings and specials have pushback or certain landing distances that generally make them safe. If you do not cancel or use a forward advancing string, you may not be able to punish them. Projectiles are usually punishable on block at close ranges. They are generally safe at farther distances, but can be armored through. They can also be generally punished by well-timed jump-ins because the opponents are still in recovery after throwing the projectiles. For characters or cameos with teleportation, a well-timed teleport can also punish them. Always remember, this is an assist game. The strings, specials, etc. can be made safe by cameos. Next up we have jump-ins. These can be punished via anti-airing, air-to-airing, or a blocking. Anti-airing for each character is very different and unique. The universal option is your 9-frame uppercut down 2. Generally, quick standing buttons with good vertical hitboxes are perfect to utilize for anti-airing. This varies from character to character. Specials can also be used to anti-air, such as with a shocker or razzle dazzle. Generally in MK1, a lot of fighters anti-air with their standing 1 or standing 2 buttons. It's up to you to figure out your best anti-airing options. Air-to-airing involves jumping to meet your opponent mid-air and punish them with aerial strings or buttons. A blocking is also another universal option to jump-ins. This mechanic leaves the opponent negative when jumping in and cancelling into a button, affording you a punish. Remember, opponents can also empty jump in to bait up blocks. Last we have tripping. This refers to outspacing the opponent's jump in and interrupting them before they touch the ground with a low button tripping them. Next we have whiff punishing. This refers to punishing an opponent for whiffing, also known as missing or failing to land a button, special, throw, etc. Here are some examples. You're engaging in neutral, and Melina makes a read that you're approaching, so she preemptively throws out her overhead to catch you, but it whiffs. She's now stuck in a set amount of recovery, determined by that specific button's recovery frames. In this case, it's 26. Now I have various ways of going about doing this, but typically you want to use buttons with fast startup frames. Here's another example. Raiden intentionally whiffs his electric fly to reposition. With Melina, I can whiff punish it with a teleport or her ball roll. Last, here's another example. Raiden's forward 4-3 string has 26 frames of recovery. If whiffed, he can be whiff punished by his opponent fairly easily. Every character can whiff punish differently. Cameos also afford them such options. Some examples of good whiff punishing moves are Melina ball roll, Reiko's back 4, etc. You can also intentionally make buttons whiff. One method involves utilizing plus frames and backdashing to make a potential button whiff. This allows you to use a forward advancing string and punish the whiff button. Another method involves ducking highs. Certain strings have high enders that can be ducked and punished. For example, Liu Kang's back 2-3 ends in a high that can be ducked, allowing you to full combo punish him. There's context to this, such as special cancelling to make the gap safe or interrupting the cameo calling to punish the fighter, etc. But don't worry, I'll make entire videos explaining more of these concepts in depth. You can also duck throws because they're highs. This makes the throw whiff, allowing you to punish the opponent. Throws have significant recovery. They can also be jumped, allowing you to punish them. So that's the video. As I said, I'll go more in depth into these various concepts as they each possess their own various contexts. So stay tuned for more. I'm out. One love.